not just one of the family of nations. This is a nation with a great mission to perform for the benefit of liberty-loving people everywhere.
That we shall be as a city upon a hill.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country.
You've come to fight as free men. Free men you are. What will you do without freedom?
Proclaim liberty throughout all the land.
In one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. You gotta fight for your right. Can you dig it?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News on your morning time. It is 9:01 on this August 20th, Thursday morning. My name is Mr. Henry David Sean Thompson, sitting over there. My left, your right, doesn't matter where he's flying in. He's always bringing the realness that is the real news. I'm opening up the unified chat right now. Those that don't know what the unified chat means is if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, doesn't matter where we're streaming this thing from. If you pick this up on Parler, if you pick this up on Minds, it doesn't matter where you pick this up from. If you comment, I will be able to see it in this unified chat going on right now. So we got a massive community going on. For those that may have just joined for the first time, what we do here at Real News, we try and create an atmosphere upon which we can have conversations with those that we disagree. We want to do it through calm, cordial dialogue and exchange of genuine ideas, so that when we do have disagreements, we have disagreements amongst friends and neighbors, not enemies. That is vitally, vitally important for everything we have going on right now. You see in the top of the show notes there today, quick rundown as to what the show is going to be. Then we'll kick it over to our boy Shine, see how he's doing today. First story we're talking about here in just a second. New York residents are eyeing Nashville. Apparently, they're fleeing New York, coming to Nashville. Get ready for that, folks, here in Middle Tennessee. We got a Boycott Goodyear situation going on. I have several thoughts about that. And Fortnite versus Apple, or rather, I should have put Epic
Fortnite
Games.
sucks. Fortnite sucks.
Here's the take. That's your analysis.
Right
Scratch
now,
that story up, right?
Fortnite sucks. Apple's not much better, but Fortnite definitely. Apple's way better than Fortnite. Even I like the Epic Games launcher. I'll give them that, but I've never played Fortnite. Never will. In your face, Ninja. You know,
we will have more to come here shortly as to what Sean is even talking about with why Fortnite sucks, what Epic Games is, and all that stuff here in just a minute. But Sean, buddy, how you doing over there in East Tennessee way? Everything good for you?
Yeah, everything's really good. I got some coffee, and we have the unified chat on the screen. Wait, I can't ever do this right. Over there, and people seem to really like it, so we're going to keep it. We're going to keep the chat on the screen so people can see it. That way you're watching on Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook, or even on Real News Radio Live, you can see what everybody's saying. Not just the people on Facebook, or not just the people on YouTube, you can see it all. So that's really nice. Good morning to everybody. We're going to have a great week, and happy Real News 100! Woo!
Yeah, that's right. Real News 100.
Good
Boom.
times. Come on.
We did it.
We do this show. You know.
This is Real News 100 just since the COVID shutdown started in around February. So we've been going.
100 days of COVID coverage.
That's what I'm talking about.
Coming to you here on the interwebs.
Hey, man.
But,
and
look, dude, this is almost as exciting as when Joe Biden accepted the nomination the other night. I mean, that's... Woo!
Woo! The only thing that was missing was the jaw fixed to the floor, gaping open mouth Hillary Clinton with the balloons. Whoa. That was my favorite thing, I think.
I bet people don't even remember that, but look up when Hillary Clinton accepted the nomination. Blank stares. And an open gaping mouth. It's really odd. Like you think she's weird looking normally. You should see her that time. But anyway, good morning everybody. It looks like it's like overcast in East Tennessee, but we'll brighten it up a little bit with some real news.
Yeah, we will, man. I feel like it's Friday, but it's not Friday. But that's all right. We'll treat it like a Friday show. Maybe it's because it's 100. Maybe because we're coming to the end of the.
In COVID times, every day is Friday.
There you go.
Because no day is Friday. Every day is Friday because no day is Friday. You know?
Hey, John, you're already causing controversy in the comment section. By the way, Eric just said a second ago, Fortnite does not suck.
Nah,
he
Fortnite
threw down
sucks.
the gauntlet. He threw down the gauntlet, man.
No.
I don't know what you're gonna do.
I play Overwatch. I'm a Blizzard person. I don't do Epic Games.
Bob says he only plays chess online. I think he gets both of y'all beat right there. Legitimate
he does.
game.
He wins.
That's a legit man's game. That's a brain game. Big brain game
Big
for
brain.
Bob. Hey, let's dive into some of the stuff we're talking about this morning. By the way, we're having some fun. First headline here, local story coming from Fox 17 in the .com phase. Report finds New York residents eyeing Nashville. Well, Nashvillians are eyeing Chattanooga. I guess, New Yorkers come to Nashville. Nashville's like, we don't like y'all, so we're going over to Chattanooga. It's just one massive cycle.
Everybody's like, run!
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Here's the story. A new report analyzing the searches of renters. That's interesting. A new report analyzing the searches of renters finds New York residents are most likely to be searching for a place in Nashville during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, pause real quick and let me backtrack in the show notes for a second. So that sentence you just heard is one of, not the only, but one of the main reasons why people are advocating against this property tax increase. I know you guys are getting to the point of tired of hearing me talk about it. And I guarantee as of Monday or Tuesday next week, you probably won't hear anything more about this for at least 2 to 3 months, because we're probably going to be walking these signatures in on Monday or Tuesday of next week. Our goal was to gather about 20,000 plus signatures. We think we're going to hit that goal probably around Saturday or Monday morning. So we'll be walking these signatures in. We'll be turning that petition for the Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act. But that first sentence, a new report analyzing the searches of renters finds New York residents are most likely to be searching for a place in Nashville during the COVID-19 pandemic. That sentence right there is part and parcel. One of the reasons why people are saying, why a property tax increase? Now, okay, sure, we can talk about the COVID shutdown. We can talk about how you're hitting people that can't afford it right now. But we also need to talk about for a second the amount of revenue that is just moving into this city. Now, I get it. Those are renters. But you don't think landlords are going to pass those property tax increases along to their renters? You don't think New Yorkers are going to be much more experienced or willing to pay a higher rent price than anyone in Nashville probably would have been before? And a sizable portion of those folks that are renters now are probably going to be moving into Nashville and think, dude, I could buy a place down here for half of what I was paying in New York. That's 2 times the square footage. Why would I just not do that? The point I'm making is, there's been something, and don't quote me on these numbers because it's been a while since I've looked them up, but I'm pretty sure over the last few years, we've had close to about a 27% revenue increase in our property taxes alone, just from people moving here. Just from people moving here, let alone from property tax increase. I digress. We'll get back to the story at hand. The story goes on to say, Apartment List, an online apartment marketplace connecting renters and property owners, produced a quarterly renter migration report. They found among those seeking to move to Nashville from elsewhere, New Yorkers were the majority.
Boo.
Well, and see, you say boo. Like, catch me up on all these conversations that are happening behind the scenes, because Shine, you're having a lot more conversations. And I remember back when we were on the AM/FM side, if I can pull up my boy WC one more time, I know at least a few hardcore old school real news folks know this guy WC.
Let me tell you, Grant. Let me tell you what's going on. Those Republicans are terrible. They're just terrible. They don't know how to run this area. They don't know how to run East Tennessee. We need to give someone else a chance. This supermajority is going to get us all killed.
That was a good WC. He had some points,
WC
man.
was calling my show back in like 2009. You know, like he's a long timer. He's a staple of East Tennessee calling people.
Well, but
God love him. Bless your heart, WC. I hope you're doing well. By the way,
the reason why I bring him up, Sean, is because even 2 or 3 years ago, WC was calling in on the AM/FM side and saying these things, that New Yorkers are moving into Nashville, New Yorkers are moving into Knoxville. It's those from the Northeast area that are moving down to Tennessee. I mean, I don't know. I'm not picking up on this anecdotal side is all I'm saying. This is the first report that I've seen that's just been sort of thrown in my face to say, hey, New Yorkers are coming down to Nashville, get ready type thing. But you've had some of these conversations, I presume, yeah?
So, like, I still have a lot of friends in construction, and they're telling me how busy Nashville is right now. In fact, I know a guy who runs an electrical company who's wanting to expand to Nashville, like leave a couple guys here, but move his main operation in Nashville. People are moving to Nashville, but what has happened is this has been a trend. But they're not just moving to Nashville. They're moving to places like Charlotte, Louisville, places like that. There's a lot of people in New York. And more people are leaving New York, from what I understand, than any other state in the nation right now.
Yeah.
The reason I said boo is I'd take people from California over New York.
Ooh,
And let me tell you why. People in California move here, especially to Knoxville. This happens all the time. And I love all the people from California that move here. There are people who don't like California. They don't like multi-family housing. And they come here and they build a big house on a big piece of land, and they want to be left alone. New Yorkers are used to living on top of each other.
Right.
They like multifamily housing. Even if they're loaded, they like multifamily housing. They don't see like having a house and some land as wealth. That's like not a life choice they want to make. And I don't know. I want people who want to come here and build houses. I don't want people who want to come here and live in $1 million high rise. That's not my idea of a good time for millions of people who want to live in multifamily dwellings to move here. Especially considering like we've already had, even in Knoxville, people trying to bring up codes where they try to limit single family housing to the exclusion or whatever in favor of multifamily dwellings. But anyway, it's all like, and we're not going to see like giant apartment buildings like you see in New York. What you'll see is like apartment complexes and those duplexes. You know what I mean? Those where it's 2 houses in one and things like that, or even 4 houses in one, condos and things like that. And I'd just rather see houses. I'd rather see people want to build houses. It's better for the construction industry. I think it's better for the economy. I think it's better living than multifamily housing, at least in this area. That's for me. That's just me. But yeah, I'd prefer people from California. Just because like all the people from California who come here are great. Yeah. Like, they really come here and they're like, I came here to leave that trash.
Right. And they came to leave some trash and not try and change Nashville into the trash that they just left, right? Jonathan just said in Facebook, for example, he said, from a macroeconomic outlook, trends in economics where buildings go up is a historic precursor to major recession. Kelly said, wait, WC going in the Wayback Machine, Grant Henry. Yeah, well, WC was a throwback there for sure. Eric said WC drinking game. They used to play a drinking game, Sean, all the listeners back in the day, Sean knows this, of anytime WC would say a certain phrase, they'd take a shot, and everyone was wasted by 20 seconds into the phone call. Anyways, what Shine's talking about, though, for those that don't know, the way it's been explained to me, it was called Recode Knoxville in Knoxville, but the general idea is a further densification of the city itself. As people move in, they tend to build vertically as opposed to build outwards, right? They don't build horizontally. They don't have single-family dwelling units. They build closer to the city. All right, because that's kind of what they're used to. And not only does that change voting demographics, it also changes the size itself. The problems of the city eventually bleed over into the county. And you get a very strange situation happening, at least the way it's explained to me, of sort of inevitable gentrification. All right, so what ends up happening is New Yorkers that are young, they end up moving into the city and they want to build up the middle of the city. As long as they're young and once they start dating and courting and then they start to become married, they start to think to themselves, well, I don't want to raise a child in the middle of the city, so let's move immediately to the outskirts of these little suburbs. Well, the problem there is those little suburbs have been priced for a very particular way for a very long time. But they don't care. Certain individuals that don't care will move from New York. They're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for some job they just picked up in Knoxville anyways. So these young couples will move directly to the outskirts of the suburbs, and they will just upbid the houses out of existence. They don't care what it is. If a $200,000 house is there, they'll pay $300,000 for that house just to get it. And then what they might do is put another $100,000 to $150,000 in that $200,000 house just to make it look nicer. That's fine. It's totally fine. But what ends up doing is it ends up pricing out a lot of the other residents in that area because the entire property value rises. Now, most would say that's a good thing, and it might be a good thing. But seen outside of a vacuum or seen, the way that it ends up happening a lot of times is the lower socioeconomic individuals that have lived in those houses for a long time or might be renting in those places, they are then squeezed and forced out. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so
let me say this too.
Reaction sometimes.
Like, we have a bunch of multifamily dwellings in New York City. A lot of infrastructure, a lot of money paid. People just left, and they're leaving in droves. That's why I prefer homes, real homes, single-family dwellings, is because in times of tumult, people won't just leave. It's so much easier to leave those multifamily dwellings and not think about it because you don't think of those places as yours. I want people who live in Tennessee to think of their home as theirs.
Yeah.
As their own home, not something they're just staying in. I know that's, I don't know, maybe I'm living kind of Pollyanna world right now, but like I abhor the tension between single family and multifamily dwellings. Like, if people want to live in a multifamily dwelling, that's totally okay. I don't like it being forced on people. Like in Germany, in the whole country of Germany, their coding system doesn't allow them to build new single family dwellings. All single family dwellings are being phased out in Germany. And if I ever live in a world like that, I'm going to move to a third world country or something. Like, I just don't want to live in an apartment building or in a duplex or in a high rise. That sounds like hell to me. And I don't want to do it. It's like, but I appreciate people who want to do that. But I see so many benefits to, man, even renting in a home makes you feel more like you're a part of the community than living in an apartment.
Yeah, right.
But like, and I use New York as an example, a little bit of adversity and that city is emptied and it's going to tank, you know, where I think if people lived in homes they owned and things like that, they wouldn't just leave. And
let's see. Judy just asked on Facebook, whatever happened to Recode? That's actually a good question, Judy. I know from the last time we were presenting the
as
EMF.
far as I know, it's law or whatever.
Yeah, like it's there. It's enacted. They passed it. I think they were trying for a some type of recall or something like that. A recode or something like that. But I'm not sure if anything ever took off the ground with that. I don't know what their next phase is. But as far as I know, someone at Facebook correct me. Someone in the Knoxville area tell me what's going on. I'm sure if Richard Esparza is listening, he's probably been keeping up with that story. But Judy, as far as I know, Recode is law. It's there. It's good to go. For those that don't know what Recode was, just so you're understanding, like an Agenda 21, some people were saying an Agenda 21 complex to it or something, but it's you took all 70,000 plots of land in Knoxville, in the city proper area, and you basically recoded them. You restructured them sort of overnight. And it's a politically unsexy topic. Unsexy isn't even a word, but it's the least sexy politically topic we ever covered on the AMF inside when we had it back in the day. But it was the main
commercial
topic
for PBS. Our normal content is a beer commercial. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But at the same time, if you really dove down to the details, it was the story that was going to change the landscape politically, structurally, psychologically, everything. It was the story that was going to change the landscape of that city. Look at Chattanooga, man. For better or for worse, I mean, there's a pretty decent case example of what's going on there. And I'm telling you, when people move from certain areas, I don't know. It's not as if you can boycott the city that you're living in. I'll tell you one thing you can boycott, though, with that fantastic segue. Apparently, Goodyear, quick pause, realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live. That's the central landing page for all the real news related things. Find some swag there. Find our YouTube links. Find the Twitter links. Find whatever you want to. Boycotting Goodyear apparently is the next story we're going to go to. And Shine, if you see under the national story sections, instead of pulling up the Epic Times story, see that thing where it says, here's the photo in question? Click on that if you could. Because this photo is grainy and terrible as the quality is. This is the story that kind of sets the stage for what we're about to talk about here as I read through the story. And
it's up there for them. They can see it.
What you're looking at, just so I'll read it for you in case you can't make it out yourself. But what you're looking at here is it says under the acceptable tab, it shows Black Lives Matter, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, pride. Under the unacceptable tab, it says Blue Lives Matter, all lives matter, MAGA attire, political affiliated slogans or materials. Now, I'm sure most people are caught up on what the story is. For those that don't know, let's dive into a little bit of the details. So, President Trump on Wednesday called for a boycott against Goodyear tires, pointing to an apparent ban the company has on employees wearing Make America Great Again hats. Now, that's not exactly the whole story, but the story unfolded as such. Someone took a picture during a training seminar at a Goodyear tires facility, a plant. This is the photo that they published and put out there, and there wasn't a lot of context given to it, and there's still not an overwhelming amount of context given yet. But this is the story. This is the photo that they just threw out there. And it was some type of sensitivity training. You know how this stuff goes. One version is acceptable. The other version is unacceptable. And immediately, you know how these things were playing out. Immediately, people were talking about censorship. Immediately, people were talking about implication of First Amendment violations. People were talking about if some type of accommodation needs to be made. People were talking about an obvious bias against one political ideology over another. This is what President Trump had to tweet. He said, "Don't buy Goodyear tires." And this is his tweet. "Don't buy Goodyear tires. They announced a ban on MAGA hats. Get better tires for far less." And then something that was at least disconcerting to me, but I know this has been going on for a long time. And he said, "This is what the radical left Democrats do. Two can play the same game. We have to start playing it now." Now, I personally think that final sentence is the real story embedded within this story. I may be wrong, but I personally believe that this may be one of the first times that President Trump has fully articulated, yes, the right is now playing the same game as the left. Now, we've been doing it for a while. I think the election of President Trump was, in and of itself, a free market reaction to Republicans saying, "I'm just darn tired of the games that y'all have been playing, so I'm about to start playing them myself." I have another link in the show notes way down at the bottom of the stories. Might even be over under the evergreen section. I don't remember where I put it. But it's this guy who is famous for writing theological, systematic theology books. Wayne Grudem is his name. And he pins this op-ed where he says basically Christians did not make moral concessions to get Trump elected into office. It's a very interesting piece to consider. But even the premise of that question poses the idea of, have people in the right sort of foregone whatever morality or moral high ground they used to stand on to get Trump elected? Are they playing the same game as the left right now? And I think broaching that topic is the real story. But before I get too much off on that tangent, the leaked photograph of a slide, back to the Epoch Times stories, Epic Times stories. The leaked photograph of a slide said to be part of diversity training given to Goodyear employees showed that the workers are allowed to wear Black Lives Matter attire and clothing or accessories expressing pride in the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender identities. But workers were told that it was unacceptable to show support for Blue Lives Matter, a pro-police movement, obviously, or All Lives Matter, a frequent rejoinder that people say back against Black Lives Matter, or any attire at all with MAGA, Make America Great Again stuff on it. Now, the latter was used by Trump as a campaign slogan. Again, I don't think we need to explain this, but it is what it is. The latter was used by Trump as a campaign slogan during the 2016 race. Now, a spokesperson for Goodyear, they did come out with their response. Now, let me read this response, and then I'll hit some Facebook comments and see where Shine's coming from this. That Twitter leak, Shine, by the way, that's the thing I'm pulling from here. The first one says, here's the full statement. Goodyear's come out with their full statement and said, yesterday, Goodyear became the focus of a conversation that created some misconceptions about our policies and our company. Goodyear has always wholeheartedly supported both equality and law enforcement and will continue to do so. I don't know, Goodyear. I mean, you're playing a dangerous game here, Goodyear, trying to please both sides in this one. But more power to you for doing so. Here's their full statement. Yesterday, Goodyear became the focus, yada, yada. We just read that. They're going to say, first, the visual in question was not created or distributed by Goodyear Corporate. I don't know if that matters. It's become a story anyways. People are not going to be concerned about the contextualization of whether you wrote off it or signed off it or not. Moving forward. It says, nor was it a part of a diversity training class. To be clear on our long-standing corporate policy, Goodyear has zero tolerance for any forms of harassment or discrimination. Really? Or is it zero tolerance for any forms of harassment or discrimination against what you consider to be discriminatory? I mean, if it's zero tolerance across the board, then you have to openly define what discrimination means and what harassment means. I mean, if someone is getting harassed because of a MAGA hat that they're wearing, this whole thing started, by the way, because of some graffiti that was written on a bathroom wall. And I would love to know what that graffiti was. And I would presume to think that some of that graffiti was the source of what the harassment was. Now, if that graffiti was MAGA or if that graffiti was BLM, we need to know. Because if you're being consistent, Goodyear, then you probably should tell me that it's harassment and discrimination across the board, not just for one accepted woke ideology as opposed to the other. That's the problem people are having with it, is the lack of consistency. Now, let me say this to be completely clear. I don't care what Goodyear does. Goodyear is a private corporation, man. If they want to restrict one thing over another, I personally feel that is absolutely their right to do so. And I'm saying that as a good, strong libertarian. I'm saying that as a free market individual. Private companies should be able to choose to do as they want. Private customers should be able to choose to respond how they want. Now, I do find it slightly problematic, though, that I think a few of my libertarian or libertarian-leaning brethren would probably not follow me all the way to the end of that ideological chain. Here's what I mean. A lot of libertarians and libertarian-leaning folks are coming out now sort of justifying this stance based upon the alleged constitutionality of a private company being allowed to do whatever they want to do, to discriminate against one as opposed to the other, to deem what they see fit as accepted terminology and rhetoric, and the other one is not. And the idea being is that what they'll cite here is that you don't really have a true protection of free speech in the workplace like you would other places, because there's not a state actor at play. They're saying given politics' ability to detract from teamwork, employers may wonder whether they could find a lawfully discipline or discharge an employee for various actions. And the thing that I've seen cited several times is saying that, like placing a Make America Great Again bumper sticker on their car, sending emails to coworkers soliciting support for repealing Obamacare, hanging controversial political cartoons on people's office doors. What about these things? How does that fit in the workplace? If I censor these types of things, am I also violating the First Amendment? Now, the answer in each situation, it kind of depends, legally speaking. Political party affiliation and political speech generally are not protected in the workplace, like gender, race, color, age, national origin, religion, disability, things like this. A specifically protected class is not the same thing as a First Amendment violation. It's a difficult thing to discern between, but it's not the same thing necessarily. Free speech, however, still has some protections. Actions you can take will depend on, for example, whether you're in a public or private employer here, which state the employee works in, whether the workplace is a union or non-union. Other relevant considerations include company policies and practices, such as state or local laws that may supersede other things, or when organizations get involved, things like that. Now,
and they don't have to make cakes for anybody they don't like.
Right. Well, yeah. Now, contrary to popular belief, there is no right to free speech in private workplaces under the U.S. Constitution, at least in the same way we see it as when a state actor is at play. Now, when I say state actor, I mean a governmental entity, some version of government, whether it's a regulation or a law or a government organization, or, you know what I'm saying? It's not the same style of protection as if the state is doing it against you. To paraphrase Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., an employee may have a constitutional right to talk politics, but he has no constitutional right to be employed. Even the First Amendment doesn't protect political speech at work. Employers generally have the authority to control how employees express themselves on the job, and may discipline and terminate those who act unprofessionally or create disturbances, even if the expression is political in nature. All right, so now that we went through that entire thing, let's get back to Goodyear's response. I thought it was vitally important to go over what the actual legal distinctions are, because I saw several folks coming out yesterday defending Goodyear's stance, and I found it to be a little bit disingenuous the way that it was being defended. I do not think for a second that the overwhelming majority of people that were defending this stance yesterday were doing so for constitutional reasons. I'll say that again. I do not think that the majority of people that were defending Goodyear's stance yesterday were doing so for constitutional reasons. I think they were doing it because equity issues were being highlighted and Trump issues were being squelched. I think that's what was going on, and I may be wrong, and I'm sorry. I'm majorly disparaging a sizable portion of my friends and the people I align with all the time. I get that. But here's what I mean. Everything is so divided now, it's near impossible to remain ideologically consistent. Let me present y'all with a hypothetical and see if you agree with me. See if you agree with me that the overwhelming majority of people that supported this yesterday would probably not be in support of the following situation. So, let's say instead it was, I don't know, what's that company, Shine? The one that had the lawsuit going on. So they have the materials you make for crafts and stuff. Some home goods thing that there was doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Let's say you have a conservative.
Hobby Lobby?
Yeah, thank you. There you go. Perfect. Hobby Lobby, a well-known conservative privately held company, right? Let's say you have Hobby Lobby and they came out with a very opposite version of this. No BLM allowed to be worn. Nothing expressing acceptance of any of the pride community. However, you could wear MAGA hats. You could wear Blue Lives Matter hats. Now, do you think the reaction would have been the same thing? Do you think those constitutional loving individuals would have reacted the same way? I may be wrong, but I seriously doubt that they would. And yes, I am challenging my constitutionally loving brethren, my brothers and sisters who love the Constitution and seemingly justified. And I think this is justified. Let me be clear. I am in total agreement with what Goodyear did because of how I align with what the Constitution says a private company can and cannot do. But do not be misled for a second that everyone thinks the same way. I think if Hobby Lobby were to come out and say like, hey, man, listen, I don't want you to wear BLM stuff, but that MAGA hat, good to go. Good on you, brother. I think people would have lost their minds. I think libertarians would have lost their minds. I think good Republicans, some of them, I don't know. I know every Democrat in the world would have lost their minds, that's for sure. Or alternatively, let's think about it this way. Let's say somebody come out and said, hey, you now get fired on the spot for blaspheming Christ. Right? You get fired on the spot for blaspheming Christ. And that MAGA hat, good to go. You going to support that? Do you hear what I'm saying, man? I'm just looking for a sense of consistency here because I do believe the motivation behind how or why someone would accept this or not accept this has everything to do with the president's response. I think it has everything to do with the main thing that I started this rant on this morning. What I find to be ultimately problematic about Trump's tweet. Here it is again. This is what the radical left Democrats do. Two can play the same game. We have to start playing it now. And again, I know this is my personal opinion. I don't critique Trump often on this, but I do not like that sense. I get it. I understand it. But I do not like the idea that the right is now forced to play the same game as the left. I think it's going to end in a similar policy stance, a similar style of rhetoric, and a similar exchange tit for tat of what the left is doing right now. And it's an unwinnable war. No, nobody wins in that. It's literally no side wins in that. The definition of win is completely removed. It's devoid of any progress at that point. Let me finish out Goodyear's statement, and I'll kick it to comments because I've been rambling for probably 15 solid minutes here. Goodyear said, first, the visual in question is not created or distributed by Goodyear Corporate, nor was it part of any diversity training class. To be clear, on our longstanding corporate policy, Goodyear has a zero tolerance for any forms of harassment or discrimination. To enable a work environment free of those, we ask that associates refrain from workplace expressions in support of political campaigning for any candidate or political party, as well as similar forms of advocacy that fall outside the scope of racial justice and equity issues. So that was basically their explanation as to why Black Lives Matter would be supported, but Blue Lives Matter would not be. Apparently, Blue Lives Matter is a political movement, and Black Lives Matter is not a political movement. Second, they say, we appreciate the diverse viewpoints of all of our more than 60,000 associates. Goodness gracious, really? 60,000 associates, which are at the heart of many of the policies we establish. Fostering an inclusive, respectful workplace is important to establish teamwork and build culture, which is another reason we ask associates not to engage in political campaigning of any kind in the workplace for any candidate, party, or political organization. Now, I don't know how that explanation is not directly applicable to both sides of those columns, but hey, man, that's Goodyear. I'm not running the company. Do as you will, I say. Third and finally, Goodyear has always wholeheartedly supported both equality and law enforcement and will continue to do so. Some people may not take you at your word for that right now, Goodyear. They go on to say, those are not mutually exclusive. We have heard from some of you that you believe Goodyear is anti-police after reacting to the visual. Nothing could be further from the truth, and we have the utmost appreciation for the vital work police do on behalf of our shared community. This cannot be said strongly enough. I'll tell you one thing, man. Police at this point are feeling so attacked, so marginalized. I think we have jumped the proverbial shark so much from legitimate issues of concern, of no-knock warrants, getting rid of civil asset forfeiture, all the great things that we were talking about doing from the very beginning. I think we've jumped that shark so much now to just personally attacking officers, law enforcement officers, that now you have the NYPD coming out and publicly endorsing President Donald Trump. I don't think the NYPD, I have this story linked at the very bottom of the show notes in the national section. There's a YouTube clip, and I don't remember the exact time frame that this union representative gave off the top of my head. I want to say he said somewhere between 60 and 70 years. It's been 60 to 70 years since the NYPD has openly endorsed a presidential candidate. Trump is the first one they've done so in 60 or 70 years. Now, I'm telling y'all, if that's not some kind of tea leaf writing on the wall moment, I don't know exactly what it is. Let me get to the Facebook comments. I'll kick it to Sean here in a second, too. Actually, Sean, let me go ahead and kick it to you for any type of commentary response you want to give, man. I don't know how you're feeling about this. I don't know where you're coming from, man, but let them know how you're feeling. I'll just read through some of these Facebook comments.
You know, once again, I don't really feel like words are force, you know. Generally speaking, that goes for Goodyear and Donald Trump. I always prefer that political leaders use the bully pulpit over the force of government. Always. Like, all the time. That's how I'd prefer them use their position, because we have enough laws, right? Like, we have enough regulations. So just use the bully pulpit. I think that's the way to do it, generally speaking. Now, on like a philosophical level, I totally agree with you, right? Goodyear has the right, I guess. But it's 2020. You basically have the right to do whatever the hell you want. If you want to burn down a building, you have the right to do that. If you want to vote like totally legally, like, you have the right to do that. So like, I'm not surprised that everyone has the right to be doing what they're doing. That it's 2020. Everyone feels like they have a right to do everything. But just like Goodyear, City of New York said that Black Lives Matter could paint on the street, but they can't have a 9/11 celebration now. They're not doing the 9/11 World Trade Tower celebration this year. But Black Lives Matter could be painted on the street. People can't go to church in a lot of cities, but Black Lives Matter was allowed to hold a big old day of painting on the street. And it's not about being mad at Black Lives Matter about that. It's about the inconsistency, and it's about a culture-wide marginalization of certain groups and the elevation of other groups to the exclusion of all others. You know what I'm saying, Grant? Mm-hmm. This is a reflection of what the government's doing, and what some municipal and state governments are doing. And it's happening on the municipal policy level. It's happening on the state policy level. It's happening in court cases. And it's happening in the national conversation, where certain groups are given special privileges to the exclusion of all others. It's not about MAGA versus Black Lives Matter. It's about Black Lives Matter and anything related to it getting special privileges and everybody else being told to shut up. That's what it's about, to me. And I think it's totally cool for Trump to be like, there it is again. Make them pay. That's a terrible way of doing things, of elevating one group to the exclusion of all others. It's not about my group versus that group. It's about that group claiming sovereignty over all other groups, and that ideology infecting even a Fortune 500 company like Goodyear. And maybe, like, honestly, it's probably the best thing Trump could have done for the company of Goodyear to point this out, because God only knows. I mean, look what's happened to our to lots of corporations, to political parties, to nonprofits. When this ideology seeps in, they become worse off for it. So maybe the best thing Trump could have done for Goodyear was to point this out, and maybe they get a handle on what's going on in their HR departments, in their local regions and districts and things like that. I don't know how they have the company split up. They said this wasn't a corporate thing, but it was like in a nice room with a thing. That wasn't in like a Goodyear tire shop. That was at some kind of an event of some kind. So like, maybe they need to know what's going on at their company. And I do want to point out, like, this is a war of words. So like, it's okay. All words are okay. It's okay for Trump to call for a boycott. It's okay for Goodyear to make their statements. It's okay for them to retract their statements. They're just words. But what I'm afraid of is the body of work of saying all groups are restricted but Black Lives Matter and affiliated groups. And I think it's totally okay for the president to point out that that is an inherent negative, even at a private company, let alone the fact that it's being done on the state, local, municipal level, and soon to be the federal level, you know? So, I don't know. That's how I feel about it. I'm less about the philosophical whys and hows right now, way more about the practical. Because I don't think philosophy can save us from fanatics who believe that consistency and logic are white supremacy. So if the enemy, so to speak, doesn't believe in logic and rationality and proving arguments and things like that, then in my opinion, those things can't save me from them. So
Eric said on Facebook a second ago, he said, what high ground? When I was talking about the article that Wayne Gruden authored, asking the question if Republicans gave up a portion of the moral high ground too, if they made moral concessions to get Trump elected, Eric said, what high ground? Does no one remember the frog memes? It's not a game that the right is playing. To say that only takes away from the reality. The reality is that the left has been screwing with people's lives. They are playing a dangerous game. If a game is what you want to call it, if a game is what they want to call it. Jonathan said exactly. He said, that's why I kept my political mouth shut. Man, it's the best way to handle it, Jonathan, is just to keep our political mouth shut. Eric said, but does Goodyear get tax breaks? Do they get bailouts? How in bed with the government are they? And who's paying the bills for that other than the taxpayer? Let's see here. Going on a little bit more. Jonathan said a second ago, you can't be fired for anything religious, right? That's one of the things we were talking about of what a protected class is called. So there's a myriad of protected classes that employment discrimination would protect you against. You can't be fired for race, religion, national origin, creed. In some states, it's sexual orientation, it's sexual identification, it's things like that. Not all states yet, but we'll see what the Supreme Court does with that here in a little while, right? Let's see. Jonathan said the 9/11 celebration cancellation was reversed. So I guess there's some movement there. And Eric said Trump is used to dealing with the private sector, which is where this comes from. Yeah, that's a good point, right? That is a good point. Trump is used to dealing with the private sector. Now, just to lend some final light on all this, I would venture to say one of the stories people may not be seeing right now, and I'll just read the audio quote for you because it's the exact same thing would be delivered if we just played it. It'll take a time for Sean to pull it up. So plus, I kind of want to get into this Epic Games Apple story here in just a second.
Fortnite sucks.
The final piece of this Goodyear story is coming from WKRN, a local affiliate that somehow grabbed audio of the actual training seminar that was going on. And you can look for yourself. The audio clip is literally just saying this, where the person that's leading the training, actually, Shine, I'll tell you what, buddy, can you pull that story up? Because the reaction of the people in the background might be worth playing that clip for. It's that story that's down there right above. If you look in the show notes, it's right above where it says Epic Games and Apple Antitrust. It's the story just above that. Audio from Goodyear training session reveals more about zero tolerance policy. Now, what you're about to hear when this clip gets pulled up is the person doing this training says the following, says, quote, some people may wish to express their views on social justice or inequity or equity issues such as Black Lives Matter or LGBTQ pride on their face covering, shirts, or wristbands. That will be deemed approved because it applies with a zero tolerance stance. And this is, again, the speaker on the recording said this during the meeting. He goes on to say, however, if any associate wears all blue White Lives Matter shirts or face coverings, that will not be appropriate. They go on to say, let's try and comply with these so you know everyone feels good in this factory. I want to make sure, guys, think about what we do in this factory right. We all work together to make tires. That's what we do. He says we get paid to do this. So let's continue to do it and do it right and do the right thing and keep this place what it has always been, a good place to work. Now, at some point, he goes on to say something. I couldn't find this in the audio recording, but he goes on to say something about the fact I don't care if it's Democrat, Republican, I don't care if it's Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, or Trump. I don't want it in here. Now, people are pointing to this audio clip to make the distinction because they hit Kayleigh McEnany with this yesterday and Trump with this yesterday, that Goodyear's just doing a distinction between political speech and other equity speech. That is the main line of analysis that you're going to be hearing today, that this is a distinction between political speech, which in general is not accepted in a workplace environment, at least a corporate workplace environment for sure. Exclude political speech, but general equity issues are okay. Now, that's where, again, I'll stress one last time, I do find that flat line to be disingenuous at best and purposefully misleading at
BS.
worst.
It's BS, and it's the reason it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's why Trump is making a stand. It's happening everywhere. Because like I said, Grant, they don't care about being consistent.
Yeah.
They don't care. That's white supremacy, Grant. You can't be logical and consistent. That's white supremacy. And what really sucks, Grant, is the only thing these people seem to understand, and even like respect, is force of some kind. Like, when you don't put up any resistance, they're like, oh, what a bunch of wimps. But if we put up resistance, they're like, okay, well, they're worth conquering, you know? Kind of like the way, like, other countries are, you know? You know, like, other countries respect us more when we push back. And, like, they wonder why we've been giving them bad deals constantly, but they'll take the money. These leftists are the same way. They're the same way. Like, they only understand, like, pushback. They're not going to fall to logical arguments.
Well, I think what Sean is saying and what everyone would absolutely agree with is if everyone were to be honest with themselves, if you had some Harry Potter style truth serum that you dipped in someone's tongue at the right now, every single person would respond with, okay, yeah, Black Lives Matter is a political movement, Blue Lives Matter is a political movement, or neither one of them are a political movement. But you can't say that one is and one isn't. That's absurd. Jonathan just said as much in Facebook, by the way. Do you want to play that audio clip, Sean? Do you have that pulled up by chance? I mean, it's the video that's...
I really tried hard finding it.
Worry.
I can't find
man.
it.
That's the audio. The only thing I want to play the audio for is, I mean, I can explain it. The reaction that the crowd gave, or the reaction that the plant workers gave, was one of, I don't know, scorn. They chastised the guy. They all laughed. There was a lot of scoffing going on. Suffice to say that the workers of the plant were not in agreement. The entire room was not in agreement with what was happening in front of their faces like that. That's the only reason I wanted to play that clip. But go find it for yourself. It's the video embedded in that link. Hey, see, try and pull this one up here for me. The 1984 Fortnite. That's the thing in the show notes. It says Epic Games and Apple antitrust. 1984 hashtag Fortnite. This YouTube clip. All right, so let me set the stage for this, as Sean's about to play this in a second. So in 1984, Apple made this advertisement, and it's a room full of folks that are being indoctrinated by a massive screen, obviously based off of some famous novels or stories or narratives that we've all heard of before. They're all being indoctrinated off this massive projection screen, and they're all wearing gray, and they just have this sort of like, you know, glassed over look on their face. There's like a shell of a human being left. And this lady comes running in there with, you know, I don't know, some type of running suit on with a big sledgehammer. She spins around and chucks the sledgehammer at the screens, and it shatters. And I don't know, something to the effect of Apple says your preconceived notions of a computer are about to be shattered. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know what they're saying. They're breaking the mold in 1984. They're breaking the 1984 indoctrination mold. So Apple's going to save the day. Well, something happened with this game called Fortnite. And I'll tell you what this is.
Fortnite sucks.
But just play that video real quick, Sean. Fortnite can give you a little bit. Fortnite kind of threw the gauntlet down. Here's the video.
Today, we celebrate the anniversary of the platform unification directives. For years, they have given us their songs, their labor, their dreams. In exchange, we have taken our tribute, our profits, our control. This power is ours and ours alone. We shall prevail.
They did it, Sean. They did it.
Fortnite says we have a game engine, and we have some powerful cinematic music we can put on the back end. We can make a video that elicits emotion, Apple. We got you. Checkmate. Checkmate, right. Apple.
So for those that don't know what's going on, why in the world this is such a big story, the Verge article, everybody's been reporting on this, okay? And all of this goes back to about a month or so ago when they had Google, Apple, Facebook, everybody except Jack Dorsey from Twitter in front of these congressional hearings. Just basically, Democrats were breaking folks down about how you're violating antitrust law, and conservatives were breaking folks down about how you're just censoring Republicans. We all remember this going on, right? Now, a very, very interesting exchange happened between Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, during that set the stage for what's happening with this Fortnite right now. Now, quick pause. Fortnite is a video game. It's a video game that is across literally every platform you can think of. PlayStation, Xbox, PC. You can play it on your mobile phone. It's on Nintendo Switch. If you have something you can touch with your fingers, you can play this video game on that platform.
It's in the free-to-play genre.
Yes.
Which is, it's a new
Sort
thing,
of.
and they kind of like put the dollar signs in free-to-play. Free-to-play only used to be like Candy Crush.
Yeah.
So, no, and I'm not kidding. Like, they
No, you're
really
right.
revolutionized free to play and then make their money on microtransactions.
That's what it is. That's the word.
And
Microtransactions.
microtransactions is what this story is all about.
That's right. The microtransactions is what this story is all about. Now Fortnite, for some folks, it's a cartoon-ish shooter game. All right, it's in a vein called a battle royale. One person drops in, you try and beat all the other players in this little island. If you're the last player standing, you win. It's think Hunger Games with a video game. That's what it is. Okay, movie Hunger Games with a video game. It's an all cartoonish, right? So here's the story. Back to that thing that happened about a month or two ago with Tim Cook. Here's The Verge. When Tim Cook finished up his appearance in front of the House Judiciary panel in July, the conventional wisdom was that Apple CEO had gotten off easy, which he had. He was joined by, Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, a few others who seemed to have a little bit more worry in the face of Google's looming indictment and Facebook's terrifying history of election interference. Who could really care about the App Store policies? Microtransactions in the App Store policy is what this story is about, and that's how it bleeds into antitrust.
Except everybody who has a brain. When they talk about antitrust, they usually bring up Amazon first.
Yeah.
But the second thing they bring up is Apple's policies in their App Store.
Yep.
Because they own it. Like an iron fist, they own it, even though they're just a place like a mall for people to vendor store locations in.
Yep.
You get what I'm saying? But they run it like everyone in the App Store is their slaves.
That's exactly how they run it.
They run it like those people have no rights at all. Like they can't, what do you call it? It's like no surrender. It's like no mercy. You want to sell your product here, our rules, or get the hell, or we can kick you out, So like this article, who would talk about everybody's talking about the Apple App Store, you stupid Verge writer.
No, here's the story. They say, but after Epic is the company that makes this game called Fortnite. They say after Epic's dramatic attack on those same App Store policies, the questions directed at Cook, CEO of Apple, feel a little more pointed, with one exchange in particular standing out. About an hour into this hearing that happened about a month ago, Representative Hank Johnson, he's a Democrat from Georgia, started questioning Cook about App Store policy, specifically the decision in April to let Amazon Prime video rentals skirt their commission process. Now, Apple usually takes about 30 to 40% of commissions every single dollar made in the App Store. Apple is taking about 30 or 40 cents from. Every single one, every time it happens, we're talking to the tune of about $40 to $60 billion per year Apple is making off of just these commissions alone. So just to do business in Apple Store, close to half of your revenue has to be given to Apple. Now, close, it's 30 to 40%. Okay, so you get to keep 70% of it. It's a pretty high mark. So Johnson asked, is that reduced commission that you guys just gave to Amazon Prime, is that available to other app developers? And Cook replied with, well, it's available to anyone that meets the conditions. Yes. Now, what those conditions are, Johnson went back and forth with.
No. You got to focus in on that stupid writer putting what with an elegant dodge. What is with these people worshiping these tech people with an elegant dodge? Golly.
Well, look, Johnson went back and forth with Cook, focusing specifically on the company's payment process requirements, a point that was raised in Epic's game antitrust lawsuit. Johnson finished with a question that now seems almost prophetic. Here's the question that set off everything. Quote, has Apple ever retaliated against or disadvantaged a developer who went public with their frustrations about the App Store? So here's the story. We got the background set. We have the stage set. We know what's going on with Epic Games. We understand what Fortnite is. Okay, so within this game called Fortnite, Shine brought up this term called microtransactions. Fortnite is technically free to play. You do have to pay a one-time fee to get a new season development from time to time, but for the vast majority of the people that play this game, it is free to play. Unless you want to upgrade your gun or put a new skin on your character or make yourself look different, or this little sledgehammer thing that you walk around with to hit things and get materials to build stuff in the game. You can change the way that looks. These all things cost real money. Real, actual American dollars or European dollars or Australian dollars. It costs real money. So you go in there and you buy these Fortnite dollars, these Fortnite bucks, these Epic currency, Epic, the game developer currency. I don't know what they call it, but you buy it in game. and you use real dollars to buy their dollars, and then you use their dollars to spend making your character look cool or something. Now, what Epic did was because every single time someone on Apple, we're talking billions of players, and I'm not exaggerating that number, billions of players would have to go through Apple's App Store to purchase this Epic currency, this Epic game developer currency. So every single time someone was spending $1 worth of real money to get Epic currency, Apple was taking 35 cents of that dollar. So Epic said, I'm done with it, man. We have billions of players that play this. I can go over to Google and they can buy it directly through me. I can go over to Samsung and they can buy it directly through me. You guys are the only ones that are charging this exorbitant fee just to maintain on your platform. So Epic, they instituted an in-round. They basically just shoved in a way for Apple users to buy the Epic currency directly from them. So what did Apple do? They kicked them off the App Store altogether. I mean, entirely. Apple,
Apple said, nah,
not in my house.
Not in my house. You're going to play my game, you play by my rules. Tim Cook says, we're going to have a curated platform. We're going to have a curated platform, and it costs money. So.
Now I know some people may be thinking to themselves right now, like, oh, come on, dude. It's a video game. Wait, what does this matter for anything? I don't care what little kids are going to do with their time, and I don't care what happens with Apple if they want to shut them out, if Epic Gaming wants to go one way over another. The reason why this matters is because Apple just took a retaliatory action. Is that a word? Retaliatory? They just retaliated against the company.
You're doing a great job. We know what you mean.
Thanks, buddy. They just retaliated against a company that broke Apple policy. And when specifically asked that question a few months back, Tim Cook responded with saying, sir, we don't retaliate. The question that was posed to Tim Cook said, has Apple ever retaliated against or disadvantaged a developer who went public with their frustrations with the App Store? He said, sir, we don't retaliate or bully. This is Tim Cook's direct quote. We don't retaliate or bully people. It's strongly against our company culture. Not only is it strongly against company culture, it speaks towards this idea of antitrust. It speaks towards this idea of such strong control over a single marketplace that you cannot go anywhere else. There is no competition at all. Think Big Oil back in the day. Think Bell South. So take all that Big Oil, Bell South, the amount of revenue that they were gunning, and try and follow me here with the reason why this is such an important story. The amount of revenue that Bell South had back in the day, the amount of revenue that Big Oil had back in the day. I know it's not directly comparative with, say, $40 to $60 billion, but $60 billion is something for a company. And if $60 billion worth of revenue is not enough to draw people's attention to say that Apple is the only one that has creative control over any of that, every single Apple user in the world, the tune of 40 to 40-something% of smartphone users across the world, it starts to develop this scenario of whether Apple is actually breaking antitrust law. And if you can set an antitrust violation with Apple as a precedent, imagine what the legislators might be able to do with something about that when it comes to Amazon. Or imagine what Democrats might be able to do with that when it comes to something like Facebook getting involved
or
with
Google
cryptocurrency.
with Google advertising, because that's right in the crosshairs right now.
Right?
Just like Apple's delivery service or not Apple, Amazon's delivery service and Apple's App Store. All three of those things are in the crosshairs right now.
Exactly.
But Apple's is the weakest to defend.
Yeah.
Because there is well-established statute and precedent of when you're a vendor, like Apple is, offering the same services to the same people who are, you know what I'm saying? You can't say it's cheaper for you, friend of mine, or someone I really want your business. It's cheaper for you, and it's a different price for you. We have laws against that, especially when you start reaching certain dollar increments, and the penalties get more intense the more dollars you're using. At least that's my understanding. But Apple has the weakest case to fight against, and they know it's coming too. Like all these things, like Epic wouldn't have done this if maybe they didn't know something was coming down the pike. They're just getting ahead of it. They're just getting ahead of it.
And look, Eric just said in Facebook a second ago, quite aptly, in poetic sense, I guess, as well. Pulling this entire show full circle, he says, private company, right? Hey, man, let them do what they want to do. Obviously, Eric's drawing the juxtaposition between this fine line of, what do you let the free market run with and what don't you let the free market run with? What is a a monopoly and what's not a monopoly. What can Apple do with the App Store that they cultivate, they garner? And if Apple wants to charge 70% commission fees to do, business on their platform, why shouldn't they be allowed to do it? These are some of the questions that need to be asked.
They're a private company who's living under government protections. The App Store is protected by Section 230, just like everything else is, and that's the truth.
Honestly, I think that's a little bit of the argument that Eric would make too. Because Eric's the same guy that asked.
If you're being protected by government protections, it's like you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Mm-hmm. Then you can be made unsafe by government regulations.
And that's what I'm saying. I think Eric's agreeing with you because Eric, for those watching, is the same guy that asked previously, okay, so how much kickbacks is Goodyear getting? How in bed is Goodyear really with the government? Okay, so how private of a company, I believe this is what Eric was asking, how private of a company is Goodyear really? I mean, in a practical sense, I know legally speaking, sure, they're a private company, but in a practical sense, most of this antitrust conversation doesn't have a lot to do with actual antitrust. It does. It doesn't have everything to do with actual antitrust violations. It also has something to do with the idea of there's some stuff going on with tech companies arguably becoming as powerful, if not more powerful, than government itself, and government trying to claw back some of that influence. I mean, that's what's really going on, man. You really want to know what's breaking down here? This is government. This is a little bit of government saying, darn it, if we just let Google, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, and Apple kind of become more powerful than the U.S. government.
Yep, and I say it all the time. Constitution is not a suicide pact, okay? We're not going to follow our principles to live under robot overlords. You know what I'm saying?
Right, man. And Eric's right. He just said depends on how much government is involved. Jonathan just said it's on the stock market or IT's in the stock market.
He's saying it's not a private company. It's a publicly traded company.
Publicly traded company. Yeah,
yes.
Sure. But
which puts it under, that makes it more likely to be regulated.
Yeah.
Because that puts them under more. You don't see companies as big as Apple and call them private companies. The biggest private company in the world is in Knoxville, and it's Pilot. They're the largest non-publicly traded company in the United States, I believe. But they're only worth $500 or $600 million, where Apple's worth any company worth billions. It's because they're publicly traded.
Now, when I say private or public, I'm making a distinction between government controlled or non-government controlled. But even that distinction is very, very difficult to play with now, isn't it? I mean, that's very, very difficult to play. I've heard some folks even, and I'm not saying this is a wrong thing. Don't get me wrong. I feel like the way I introduced that, people would think this. I've heard a lot of folks make the argument that, look, because of government funding with the DARPA program, you could make a reasonable claim that the American people have at least some stake in all of these tech companies. I don't know, maybe not Facebook, because apparently the story goes that it was just one random dude in his dorm room. Now, I don't even know if that's true. But for a lot of these other companies out there, one could make the reasonable argument, I assume, that because of DARPA and government funding, the development of what has become the internet and the massive reach that it has now, and all these companies, the American taxpayer has something involved with that. Yes, no, I don't know. Seems like just a good time to end the program here, man. Shauna, for some reason, I keep thinking it's Friday, but I don't know why I'm thinking that. But I was about to say we'll be back on
Friday.
Monday.
Woo!
One story I did want to bring up today, just to mention y'all, just because I thought it was so, I don't know a word for it. Maybe funny, maybe I'm not sure. Here's the Epoch Times story as we're heading out. Apparently, the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, he has proposed a new little trickaroo on those cities that are trying to defund police. He says that he's just going to freeze your property tax revenue. He says he's just going to freeze your property taxes at whatever current level they're set at right now. So if you propose to defund police, Governor Abbott says you're just not going to be able to raise property taxes anymore, so you're not going to grow anymore. I don't know why I think that's so funny. It's probably maybe it's not funny.
I feel like it's similar to the things that we've heard in Tennessee, where it's like, do these cities know that they exist at the pleasure of the state, that they get their sovereignty from the state in the counties, and we could dissolve the city government. I've heard people say these things in a theoretical sense, not in a threatening sense, but in a theoretical, philosophical, hypothetical sense. Like, how powerful do these people really think they are? They think their city is just sovereign, like they have power and they have money and it can't be taken away. you know? And I hope it doesn't come to this, but these people need to know where power lies, I guess.
I hear you, man. I absolutely do. It's the times we're living in. Jonathan just said on Facebook, by the way, he says, I'm just going to throw this out there. They could shut it down tomorrow if they wanted to. Jonathan, was that about the tech story, about this Texas Abbott story? Eric said on Facebook, I have no idea what day it is. It's all Groundhog Day. It is all Groundhog Day.
It is. That's why I said it could be Friday if you want it. Because in COVID times, every day is Friday and no day is Friday.
Eric just said too, he's so punny, this Eric. He said, David Groundhog Day. You get it? Living in a leftist nightmare, he said. David Groundhog Day is what he said. Jonathan said, oh no, Nashville's been warned by the legislature. And Richard said, hey, nice shirt.
Hey, Jonathan, don't quote me on that. I didn't say that. I didn't say Nashville's been warned by the legislature. You didn't hear me say that? Yeah. I've heard people speak philosophically, hypothetically. Right?
Here's the shirt I'm wearing, by the way. You see this? Can y'all see this? What happens at the Fed stays at the Fed. See these graphics? Look at it. It's beautiful, right? That's our boy Richard Sparza. You want a t-shirt? Reach out to our boy Richard Sparza, or reach out to us. Get in touch. You want one of the shirts? We'll get you a shirt from Richard Sparza. He's the man with the plan. My name is Mr. Henry. This has been Real News for your Thursday morning on August 20th. Getting out a little late at 10:06 this morning. David Shine Thompson with us as always. We will be back tomorrow doing it big. Show 100 during the COVID shutdown times. We love each and every one of y'all. This community that we're building with each other is so fantastic to see. We love y'all for real. Love doing the morning thing with y'all. Love getting to spend some time with each other, and just I feel like I know most of y'all that come and tune into this thing. I feel like I know. We just pick up conversation. That's what Eric and I do. That's what Jonathan and I do. That's what all the folks here do in Nashville as well. Come see me in Nashville sometime if you're ever here. Stop by. We'll do the thing together. Hey, be out for right now. Love y'all so much. See you tomorrow.